What if you could silence the noise of the world and access inner bliss? What if you knew the shining formulas for overcoming the enormous challenges that every soul faces? Welcome everyone, I'm Shakti Durga. Mystery School podcast, Ancient Wisdom for Everyday Life, will explore the ancient wisdom of the East and West, sharing stories and music, channeling light beings, scanning the unseen world, learning useful spiritual tools, and bringing forth peace, love, purpose, and abundance. In Mystery School, we co-create and share sacred frequencies, sending ripples of love that empower new possibilities to ignite our spirits, overcome obstacles, manifest our most inspired life, a life where your challenges become doorways to your deepest truth, where you anchor yourself in clarity and presence, not from your pain, but from the doors it opens into the deepest wisdom that's already within you. Your path has already begun. It's right beneath your feet. Let's illuminate that path together.
I want to welcome everyone. Jessica and Jessica's producing the show. We were talking about this episode. Of course, you heard a little bit about Shakti Durga and, of course, the show. But this particular episode is called The Illusion of Control. And many questions come out of the Shakti because, there are questions about, do we feel safer? How do we define control? How do we know what control is, even when we don't think we are in that space of the illusion? So today's episode is extremely important. And all I needed to do was get a report from the Psychology Association that I belong to today on a study they did. But even in that study, they're not going to get at what you're going to say today. It is an illusion, isn't it?
It is a bit of an illusion. Good morning, and hope everybody's doing well with all the crazy weather you've had going on over there. The thing is that our ego really thrives on control and domination, but our higher soul doesn't. And our higher soul is the more powerful of the two. And so what happens is, if we become too controlling and we start to grip onto life too much, and this will bring anxiety, it will bring a lot of pain really, and a lot of effort that becomes more and more and more the more we try and exert the control, then eventually your higher soul will dance with the universe, which is changing all the time, and put so much pressure on you that you have nothing to do but change. And that change will either come internally, that you just can't stomach what you've been doing, or it will be an external force that works on you to ensure that change happens. So either way, control can only be seen as a short-term intervention by your ego. And the great masters that I've had the privilege of watching over the years and befriending, they don't work from the same parameters. They don't work from control. They work from flow, and they work from alignment. And alignment is something that is a bit scary to the ego, because alignment is something that you're continually doing little adjustments, and it's like a dance. And so you have to listen to the inner voice to stay in alignment and stay in flow. And there will be times when the experience might be not so much flow or whatever, but there are ways we can deal with that too, so that we don't lose ourselves. We're not talking about just being a blob of indistinguishable nothingness. We're talking about having a clear vision about where we want to be in our life, and then allowing the universe to help us get there. So it's definitely a spiritual concept. It takes us beyond the physical world, takes us beyond the world of the mind, and it takes us through our etheric or flowing body of light, which is called Ruach in the Kabbalistic mysteries. And the Ruach is this flow, a flow of consciousness, and we can align with that with our breath, and coming just to start talking universe a bit more than we might have before, to try and understand more of what the universe is trying to tell us and what our higher soul is trying to guide us away from and towards.
Yeah.
Mm,
I love this topic. And I want to say for me, I've had many, many lessons, but the strongest and greatest lesson I had was when I thought I could control my alcoholic drinking.
mm,
And I thought I
mm,
could control it until one day I realized, and it was a spiritual moment. You're going to talk about what that means and how it feels, but there's a moment that you get to that
mm.
ultimate surrender and
Yes.
trying to do things and force things in this earth skin just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, and that's really, at the end of the day, the most convincing of any argument you could possibly bring forth is it just doesn't work anymore.
It
You know,
doesn't
we
work
we
anymore.
we're in a position where there's nothing to do but surrender. And in that surrender, which is something we fight, it's like you can see some surrender point coming up, but you're on a wild horse and it's
Yeah.
galloping towards that very point that you don't want to go to, and then in the surrender, you realize that the jump that you were fearing, the big fence, it's behind you, and you feel fabulous. It's such an enlightening experience, but it's so hard leading up to it. But it really
Yes.
does change us in terms of allowing a deeper penetration of light into and out of the core of our being than ever before. So it's really important stuff to anyone who's got an interest in the self-realization and the attainment of the soul's highest objectives. And after these surrender points, our focus in life shifts. And in that shifting, we can look back at all the things we're trying to control before and go, what was I thinking? Why was I even so invested in all that stuff? There's that saying, don't sweat the small stuff. But we do. We do. And we get very upset if someone tries to challenge our perception of how things could be. And so there are times when, look, you could keep fighting and you could keep slogging, but sometimes people will say to me, my job is killing me. And and then we have to have a conversation about, well, why are we continuing in that role then if that job is killing you? That's trying to control the
Yeah.
variables of life and making sure that I have that income or whatever. But if it's killing you, perhaps there is another way, and we need to surrender to the universe, do our inner work, get very stable in the inner core of who we are. And in that stability of our inner core, we get re-resourced and we get redirected.
Yeah.
So it's a really powerful concept.
I want to talk to you about the mystery schools for a minute
Mm,
and what you've created.
mm,
And I want to make sure people get a lot of information about it because let me just follow up by saying the following. Um, my decision to get sober, I know it was a spiritual God shot, but the journey that then happened, I could not have predicted it. And I
yeah.
tried to muscle my way through the first couple of years, but I didn't have rose-colored glasses anymore. And here's what I love about what you're talking about. And I hope you'll talk about what the school is doing
Mm, mm,
because nothing seemed right. My
mm,
25-year career, selling my soul, doing things
mm,
that didn't make sense,
mm.
and then putting it all up for grab and walking away because I wasn't willing as an executive to do something out of integrity. I had no idea of the freedom
Yeah.
of that place in my heart.
And that's really worth, that's worth more than gold to have that freedom, that feeling of freedom. And one can then contemplate life and self and the meaning of one's existence from a place where you're not just on a treadmill doing the same thing
Ugh,
over and over and over again. So, um, and particularly people who have incarnated, who are a bit more sensitive than the average person, which would probably be most of the people listening to a podcast
yeah.
like this. That's why. And also, I think a lot of the people who end up in 12-step programs tend to be amongst the more sensitive people on our planet. And given that the planet is existing in a crazy way, at
Mhm.
the present time, then you can understand why people
Yeah.
turn to something to ease the pain.
Yeah.
But when we can start to realize that our own inner being can can really heal us, and that the ultimate healing to me is not just freedom from disease or freedom from pain. It's actually the illumination of our whole consciousness,
Mm.
and that we start to recognize more and more what it actually means to have a more exalted life. And that's what the mystery
Mhm.
school is for. So the first part of our mystery school, which is the path of ease and grace, is all about get your foundation set, learn tools to navigate your relationships, learn about your energy field, learn about wealth generation and how one can look at that from a 5-dimensional model and get very grounded with that. But at the same time, then comes a point where we don't want to live in like the bottom of an hourglass anymore in this little world just constructed by the ego. So by having given the ego some parameters, some structure, some light really and refinement over time, which tends to be quite actually joyful and a field of exploration that most people get a lot out of, then it's time for the higher mysteries. And the higher mysteries, then we get help from angelic beings, from divine beings, and from our own higher soul, and from gurus, rishis, sages, saints, holy masters, to actually move our consciousness through different levels of vibration from where we've been centered and where we've thought this is normal. We go on a journey to where we will pierce the veil of the illusion of that normality where, at one stage the ego was wanting to be in control of everything. We realize we actually are in control of nothing, and that there is this giant flow that is like the conductor of the orchestra, call it the divine, call it whatever you want to call it, and that if we can learn to open to that and to dance with that, we can have very joyful, very meaningful, very abundant, and very amazing lives where our old life that we were trying to cling to just looks like a relic of some
Yeah.
old kind of TV show or something that you think, oh my God, that was a horror film. Isn't it great that I've escaped from that and I'm now doing something so differently to how I would before? And you can look back as someone who's been in a mystery school now for over 30 years, you look back at who you used to be and you just have such compassion for the you that didn't know what you know now.
No kidding.
And yeah, and so I think that's the one of the biggest things, that then you can help others because you've learnt a bit, and then you can just share how your life's changed and how things have transformed. And so that's what people in our mystery school are doing, and we're
Mm.
helping to transform.
There's
And
so
at
many
different times
possibilities.
yes,
There's so many
yes,
possibilities. I
mm,
wanted, I would love for you to talk about something, because this is something that you all help people and teach people in the
mm,
mystery schools. For somebody like me, my journey really turned my life around. I
yeah,
mean, I
mm,
went in a direction to go back to school, but little did I know for the next decade or so, the people that I would meet that would help me crack myself open,
yeah,
including at a very conservative school in
right,
Claremont, studying
right,
with Mahali, who was researching flow.
mm, right, yeah,
The universe knew that if you were going to talk to me flow and the way you and I are talking about it now, that I was not going to listen, but give me a few
mm,
statistics back then, and you got my
yeah,
attention.
yeah,
And he asked us a question, and I want to ask you. He asked the class, how many of you think you're attached to your life?
mm,
And very few people. And he said that I want you to walk up to the registrar and I want you to tell the registrar that you no longer want this program.
mm,
He said, what if this education were stripped away from you?
mm,
You could hear a pin drop. He called it attachment theory, but let's talk
mm,
about attachment if you could.
yeah, yeah. Well, we know we're attached to something if we have pain if it's taken from us, or we have pain if we can't achieve whatever it is
Mm,
we're attached to. We have pain in a relationship we're attached to if we're trying to control the other person and they're not doing what we want or they're not meeting our needs, and we're attached to a version of the relationship that may have no grounding in reality. And what we're really attached to is the meeting of our own needs. And that's truly the essence of attachment is I want my needs to be met. And, there's a part of us that has to stay alive to stay on the spiritual journey. You know, the ego needs to, it needs love, it needs security, it needs some attention, it needs, there's a whole bunch of things the ego
Yeah.
needs. But when we can learn to meet those needs ourselves mainly, then what will happen is a ripple of energy will start flowing from within us that other people want to help us with that. And it's not from any kind of control or codependence. It's literally from yearning to be together. Like it's nice to be together. It's
Mm,
I'd really like to cook you a meal. I'd really like to whatever it is, help you with this. Or, you know, people find that they get different feedback, whereas they used
mm,
to get criticized a lot. Now they're being thanked for the things that they're doing for people, you know, and they don't think anything much has changed. But on the inside, the landscape has changed. As we let go of some of those attachments, we we're not coming from an emptiness that we've got to get filled from somewhere, and we get really anxious and attached to what we believe will fill the void within. And so when we can do that through our connection to our higher soul, to the
mm,
infinite, to the earth, to nature, then it changes the dynamic completely in our life. And because we live in an age where these kinds of things are not known in the greater society, we run up against lots and lots of situations with people who don't know these things, and then we get to practice more skills and more levels of non-attachment and contemplating, interesting, how is this arising? You know,
yeah.
what is this arising in my life? And then the spiritual education, where we can look at, well, is it arising because it's something I believe would arise? Like, you can't rely on people. And so that will give rise to a whole bunch of problems because no one's reliable and I have to do everything myself. I've got to control everything
Mm,
myself. You know, is it that level? Or maybe you've done work on that and you're good on the thought level, but you have some old karma where you played that out for so long, and perhaps you were unreliable in the past, where you can't remember being unreliable, but perhaps you were. And so now here's the karmic cycle coming around to present you with unreliability to see what it's like. So
yeah.
you can try and control that all you want to, but the thing is, if there's live karma, it will just come in the guise of somebody else until that karma's cleared. And so when we learn to speak universe, which is one of the things I think we do pretty well in the mystery school, is we help people understand the universal voice better. Then you can go, okay, well, what do I need to do to soften that karma? How can I move forward in a way that I can have a different relationship with reliability and unreliability?
I'm
And where
telling you,
is it? Yeah.
this is on a practical level, this is
Mm,
happening to millions and
mm,
millions of people.
right.
And I started to feel super unreliable over the past 4 weeks. And you're looking at somebody not used to feeling that way.
Mm,
But then I looked around and I said, for example, I've had to cancel 3 sessions with you. And
mm,
this morning, I couldn't even send your team an email because for 3 weeks, the internet has shown up to say, you're not going to do that work today, Pat. I'm not letting you do nothing. You're not
mm,
doing the emails. You're not. And it took me a while not to try to get my cell phone to, but let's talk about that minute of surrender. That's so important, if you could, because I'm not like, I don't claim to be a guru, but I have practiced and I have studied.
mm.
And that time where and I'm not alone. There are a lot of people right now beating themselves up because they're trying to control things they have no control over.
Yeah,
Surrender is so powerful.
it is powerful. And unfortunately, the word is associated with giving up.
Oh,
And giving up might be regarded as, weakness. But in this particular spiritual application of the term surrender, it takes a lot of strength. It actually takes more strength to surrender and trust than it does to continue in a battle that you're never going to win, you
I
know?
was not winning.
Mm,
I
yeah.
was not. You know, my
Yeah.
mom, I grew up with most of my life thinking that suicide was an option for me because my mom
Right.
committed suicide
Mm, mm,
until the day I decided it was not going to be an option for me any
mm,
longer.
mm. Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain the feeling of surrender. Perhaps you can, because it's
Mm,
both awakening,
mm.
painful, and freeing
Yeah.
all at one time, isn't it?
All at the one time. All of those things. And often associated with a tingling feeling in the body. There can be tears sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes there is a release of tension from the body that requires rest for a couple of days because all of the tension is literally leaving this huge accumulation that was just beneath the surface, that you were probably paddling really hard in your life and trying to keep the feeling of exhaustion at bay and just keep doing it, that keep going. And then when you just go, I can't do this anymore, I need to surrender, I put this down. It's like I put my burden down, and you can breathe and release. And the feeling is, it's liberating
Oh,
actually.
yeah.
And it helps you then align with where it is that your higher soul would have you be.
Yeah.
I've known people who hold down very important jobs in C-suites of organizations who are exhausted wrecks because they hardly ever see their family, they hardly ever have time to look after themselves because they're working day and night. And I've also known the more unusual person who works smart. One woman in particular comes to mind who she surrendered all the efforting early on in her executive career, and she used to meditate on issues and problems that were given to her to solve. And she would just come through with the most utter clarity of, this is the plan, do, all set out, the whole strategy, everything, just there it is. And then it was so easy to follow because it was in alignment of the outpouring of where it is that life was heading. And she would just lead her team into that avenue that it's co-created with the infinite. And that's not the journey of a lot of businesses. It's not the journey of a lot of organizational settings, not the journey of a lot of people, because we're programmed in boxes, straight lines, not curves. We think of everything as linear, whereas actually the ancient wisdom says even time is circular.
Yeah.
And so the outpouring of what it is we're needing to learn, like we've talked about a couple of shows ago, tends to be cycles that we go through. But the greatest movement in those cycles comes when we allow ourselves to go through a surrender experience. People say, how do you do it? And the thing about surrender is that there's not often doing involved. It's getting into complete communion with your being. And so it's a feminine or yin concept rather than a yang concept, which is, I think, why in our day and age people struggle with it so much, because we're very yang in the way we lead our lives. There's a lot of that male push kind of drive energy. And the thought of letting that go for a moment is terrifying. And so when we surrender, we're surrendering the fear, and we're going into trust and into the larger part of self, which is yin by nature. Like your higher soul is yin by nature. And the power in that yin, or the Shakti as they call it in the Vedanta, that Shakti is magnetic. And so depending upon where your mind is directing the Shakti, where it is your vibration of your inner being is directing the Shakti, that'll be into things that are kind of fearful, or it'll be into things that are sublime, or anything in between. And so in those surrender points, there's a recalibration of how we're holding our feminine energy, and then new things, new ideas, new opportunities, new avenues just open. And that saying, you can't solve a problem at the same level of
No.
consciousness that which the problem was created. Surrender is one of the doorways to get beyond that paradigm into something unknown. And I think that's part of the issue, is it's going into the unknown.
Yeah.
And
I
my
think,
teacher says that the number one quality you need on the spiritual path is actually courage to go beyond what and that's the way to surrender.
yeah,
Mm,
I so love this. I want to ask you, I know our time is almost up, but can you tell everyone here what you all are doing to help people with
mm,
this?
mm.
Because surrender for me has saved my life in more times than not. And even right now, today, you
Yeah.
know, and out of what Einstein said, for me, surrender has always been the gateway to a new level of awareness and ideas
Yeah.
and creativity.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
just don't know
exactly.
why I don't do it more often.
Well, it has to build up. I think there's a build up to something like surrender, and
Mhm.
life gives us that build up until we go to that place. So I would suggest that people have a good, solid spiritual practice,
Yeah,
and that they connect with the divine of their understanding on a daily basis, which will really help you to align with the outflow of the creative pulse so that you're with the right people at the right time for the right reason and for the right things to happen. And that tends to be what happens when we let go of the illusion of control, where we're often out of the cosmic step. We're out of the step and we're out of the dance. So by surrendering, you get back in. We have an annual program which is coming up soon in the Mystery School. It's open to everybody and it's called Shivaratri. It's the dance of Shiva, and Shiva means pure consciousness, the bliss that is beyond form. And it's about the marriage of the inner light with the life that we're currently leading. It's on our website. It's from the 13th to the 15th of February, Aussie time. And but there'll be plenty of programs online for anyone to join in, with many of the programs
mhm.
on friendly USA times as well.
Okay, what's the website again for people? Because there are many things
Yeah.
you offer, but this is an annual
Yeah.
program. This is very
This is
important.
annual. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
great program. And it's
yeah.
it's one where people have a lot of breakthroughs. And I've had more initiations at Shivaratri than any other time. Um, and it's shantimission.org,
Okay,
www.shantimission.org. And if you just scroll down on the homepage, there's a big banner saying Maha Shivaratri. If you click on that, you can book in. It's offered by donation because we don't want there to
great.
be a barrier to entry for anybody. And,
Mm,
it's amazing, actually.
I
Yeah.
love it. What's your personal message? Because this is a very important topic right now.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
level of statistics that are coming up on
Mm.
anxiety and
Yeah.
neurosis, I mean, it's beyond anything I've ever seen. But there's a solution. What's your personal message? What would you like to leave us with today?
I think that life is getting us to redefine ourselves. And so the message is you're not what you do, and you're not your output. You're not what you're trying to control. So just breathe and go within and find the truth of who you be, and flow with the universe of all possibility into a gentler, a calmer, more peaceful and meaningful life than you would have ever experienced previously.
I love it. Thank you so much for everything you do. And for all of you out there, please go visit the school. This is one program. There are people there that can help. Please
Mm,
think about yourself, think about your friends, think about your family. We do not have to continue to suffer,
mm.
right? Thank you so much for today and today's message. Mm. And to all of you out there, my experiences, there's no greater illusion than control. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining me for Mystery School, Ancient Wisdom for Everyday Life. Be the detective of your spirit and soul and seek the doorways to a new reality. Take one insight from today and let it illuminate your path. Visit shantimission.org to learn more about our other programs, meditations, and resources for living with ease and grace. And sign up for our free Soulful Relationships Masterclass. In this class, we'll cleanse and purify the relationship energy in a key relationship in your life. Previous students have experienced rapid transformation in their marriages, in their relationships, with family, work colleagues, teenagers, just from this one practice. And you'll have a spiritual key to successful relationships that you can use again and again. Sign up for the free masterclass at shantimission.org. And we'll be back at 3 p.m. Pacific time every first and third Monday for Mystery School. Mark it in your calendar. We'll see you next time.